Hi there, Donna here from Simply Living Wellness, and wanted to continue the conversation about this self-love that I talked about a couple weeks ago, actually right around Valentine's Day. And when people talk a lot about more self-love and self-care, and I think about that, I'm like, well, of course I love myself, of course, right? And then situations start coming up, or I start looking deeper and into different things that happen in life, and I start realizing that actually there's a lot more to self-love than I think we realize, or definitely than I realized. And last time we talked about three things. We talked about living authentically. We talked about speaking your truth. We talked about setting healthy boundaries. And I wanted to explore those a little bit more. Plus, a couple of new situations came up for me this week where I thought, wow, that's kind of an example of not having enough self-love. And so I wanted to share those with you. But first, let's kind of recap the living authentically and integrity. One, real example of that is being in an agreement with somebody or a situation. It could be work, it could be a romantic relationship, it could be a friendship, it could be a partnership, that you're working with somebody on something, or just volunteer or anything. And excuse me, if you're not feeling in alignment in that agreement, and you're just feeling like it's not right for you, but yet you stay in that agreement, then when we do that, we're just betraying ourselves. And that is an example, I think, of not self-loving enough, because we're not willing to end that agreement when we know it's in our best interest and best intentions to do that. So that's one example. Another one is speaking our truth. And this kind of goes a lot with the healthy boundary thing. So having healthy boundaries is one thing, but owning them is another. And it's easy to kind of set a boundary for ourselves. But if we don't own it, if we don't speak up, speak our truth, maybe when that boundary is being crossed, then I think that's another example of not self-loving, because we're just betraying ourselves. We're actually betraying the other person as well, by not speaking up and telling our truth. We're misleading them. We're leading them down a false belief about ourselves. So those two really go hand in hand, because you can set the boundary, but if it's crossed, then we need to take that extra action. It's easy just to kind of disappear or remove ourselves from the situation, but not actually speaking up and, owning the boundary. So you never notice how some people seem to just get stepped on a lot and people take advantage of them. And then there's others that they just have this empowerment, sort of sense of empowerment and owning their boundaries so well that you just, people just don't mess with them. And it doesn't mean they have to be rude or obnoxious or mean or nasty. There's plenty of those people, but there's some people that just have this sense like people just don't cross their boundaries. People don't mess with them. And yet they're very respectable people. But those are people that are owning their boundaries firmly and with authenticity and with empowerment, really just owning it. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And when you do that regularly, especially with somebody who often crosses your boundary, then people just start to realize that they're not going to get away with it. And then they start respecting you more. They start, when you say something, they know you mean it. So that's kind of what I mean. Now, the new situations that I have not been new, like as in they just came up for me, but they're new in that I kind of tied them into self-love. Interestingly enough, I kind of put the two and two together, because I'm really exploring, what does this self-love mean, really? What does that mean? Because of course I love myself. So what does it really mean? So here's a couple of examples. It really has to do with looking outward rather than inward for things like acceptance, for approval, for confidence, for pleasure, for gratification. So one example is, maybe that certain person hasn't texted you back or called you back, sooner than you would like. And this is actually happening to me right now. And I find myself constantly checking my phone. I find myself getting a little bit annoyed. And then I'm starting to think about, why am I letting that happen to me? Why am I looking outward for feeling good and pleasure and satisfaction? Why can't I just get that from within and just let that situation be that situation? And you know what? If I don't get the text back as quickly as I'd like, so what? So what? I'm still loving myself. I'm still having the best day I could possibly day and living each day as special as I can and as happy and with as much gratitude as I can. Thank you. It looks like Anathea showed up. So that's one example. The other was, sometimes when I find out about a party, for example, that I wasn't invited to, it really triggers me and it gets me a little bit hurt. And it's crazy because I have so many beautiful friends in my life, more than I can even see, as much as I even want to. And so if there's some party that maybe some of my friends were invited to and I wasn't, I mean, so what, right? I probably wouldn't have been able to go anyway. But it still sometimes has that trigger, and I'm trying to really look deep on what it is that really bothers me about that. Because there's plenty of parties that I do get invited to, or events, and yeah, loving yourself is an ongoing journey, says Anathea. So it never ends, just like any kind of self-development, self-growth. But, going back to that invite thing, it's almost like it's triggering some kind of exclusion or rejection or hurt feeling from childhood. So, I'm just noticing more these different situations where, I feel like I'm not self-loving myself enough and going inward for that acceptance, for the confidence, for the pleasure, for the gratification, for approval. So what if I don't get invited to some party that I felt like I should have gotten invited to? I need to go inward more. And so that's what I'm trying to help all of you understand, is that those are real specific examples, I think, where we don't self-love enough when we're going outward for satisfaction rather than going inward. And what do you do about it? Well, several of my coaches have taken me through the inner child exercise, and I know that's a really good one, to be with that little person, that little girl or the little boy inside you that maybe got neglected as a child, and that's why we look outward for love rather than inward. And so that inner child exercise is really good for that. You have to kind of keep doing it, but it takes time, it takes practice, it takes dedication, just like all of this self-growth does. So the other thing I just wanted to mention is I have my morning green tea, and there's the Yogi tea has a little message on it every day, and they tend to be the same thing, which is a little annoying, but this one was different. It says, your strength is your own knowledge. And I thought that was kind of interesting. It goes along a little bit with what I'm talking about this morning, that I kind of actually disagree with that, because I feel like I have tons of knowledge. I know, it's important to go inward for pleasure and approval and acceptance and and not outward. I know these things, but acting on it is a whole nother thing. So I kind of disagree with that our strength is not just our knowledge. Our strength is our ability to practice that knowledge, to take action on it. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Anathea, for joining me. I would love to hear your own experiences and your own thoughts about self-love and what you do to give yourself more self-love in your specific situations where you feel like maybe you're not doing it and how you could do it better. So the best conversation happens afterwards, down below in the comments. Thank you for coming, and namaste. Have a great week, and we will be back next Friday, 10 o'clock.